Hey everyone, my name is Audrey and I'm a librarian here at the Bartholomew County Public Library, and for tonight's Take and Make craft I'm going to show you how to make friendship bracelets. We're going to learn 3 different patterns, one that's easy, one that's medium, and one that's a little more advanced. Let's get started! So as you can see, I just folded it in half and I tied a knot so there's a little loop. And I just think that makes it easier. You don't have to do it that way, but it makes it easier when you tie the bracelet. And in terms of amount, you just want to take about 2 arms length, a few feet of embroidery floss. Here my yarn is short, just because I'm demonstrating a couple stitches to you. I just like to tape it right there. You can also use a safety pin, and you could attach it to like your jeans or a blanket or something if you don't have a piece of tape, and you should all have safety pins in your kits. And so I'm just arranging, you're going to want to arrange the threads in the order that you want the colors on the bracelet to appear. So they're going to appear kind of in a striped or stacked formation depending on the stitch. So you just want to start with whatever color you want to come first. So I want purple to come first, so I'm starting with that. I'm going to create a 4. So that means I'm going to put the purple thread over that red one, over the second one, create a 4, just like that. And then I'm just gonna pull that purple thread through, and then I'm gonna pull it right up to the top, and I just keep my hand on the red thread there to keep it taut. And as you can see, that formed a stitch right at the end there, and you're gonna do that twice. So every time you do this, you do it twice to form one stitch. If you just do it once, your bracelet's not gonna stay together. So now I have a full stitch because I just did that 2 times, as you can see up there. Now I just put the red to the side on the left because that's already been done, and I'm going to move on to blue. And now keep in mind, this is all going to be a purple line, and you'll see that, you'll be able to visualize it once I finish the first line, but it's all going to be purple. So I just made that 4, and I'm pulling it up, there we go. And once you get a little faster, you don't have to make a complete 4, your fingers will just know how to arrange the thread. So now I'm moving on, I've got another red one, and then another blue one. So I just finished, that's one line, that's a row, so that's a purple stripe. So the next one, as you can see, is going to be a red stripe. So I'm just gonna make the 4 again, pull that red thread through, pull it up. Remember to do it twice. Always remember to do this twice. There we go. Put the blue string aside. Now I've got another red string. You do want to be careful when you have strings that are the same color, just so you don't confuse them. It's not the worst thing in the world if you do. It's okay. If you mess it up, just keep going. It's not going to ruin your bracelet, but just try and remember. So now I have a purple row and a red row, as you can see there. And sometimes, you just want to pull it a little bit and tighten it, which is what I was doing there. So I just had that little bit of red thread showing, as you can see. I just pull that through. I just pulled that red string, and that little bit of red that had come up just disappears. So if you ever see something that's kind of out of place, just give each individual string a little bit of a pull. If you're having trouble with that, don't worry, because this next stitch is, I think, a little easier. It's the same principle, make that 4, but you're making it around all of the strings. So you don't really have to worry about arranging them in order and pulling them out one at a time. Just make that 4, put it around all the strings, and then pull it up. And that just makes one large stitch. So as you can see, it doesn't have, multiple stitches per row. It's just that one. And I'll do a few more and you'll see how that looks together, because it creates a different effect. So you can make a bracelet like the first one we did, or you could do this one. So there are 2 stitches right there. And this is all in the instructions I sent you. They show you how to do this and have diagrams and written instructions there. So if you're finding this confusing, you can also use those. So next I want to do purple. And the nice thing about this, as I said, is you can just choose which color you want to go next. I want purple, so I'm going to do the 4, pull it up, and you can do as many as you want. So if you only do a couple, it'll be short. The color won't, it won't go for very long. But I'm doing more on this one, so the purple section's going to look longer than the blue section. So you can play around, maybe, you want them all to be the same length, or, some are shorter than others to create a different effect. So we're going to move on to our first bracelet of the evening, and this is the easiest level of bracelet, and it incorporates that second stitch we just learned that makes a 4 and goes all around the rest of the threads at once and creates that sort of rope-like look that we just used. So you're going to create the 4 around all of those, yep, and just pull that stitch up. And then you're going to do it again. And this one, you know, the first stitch I showed you, which is a little more complicated, you have to worry about doing it twice. This one, you know, as soon as you do that one loop, that's one stitch. And, you know, you can see they just stack on top of one another, which is why it doesn't really matter, you know, about doing 2. So I think here I'm doing 8, I believe, stitches before I switch to the next color. And so I'm going to do pink next. And as you can see, there are 2 pink strings. There are 2 strings of each color. So you always want to, you know, just check, and maybe if you just used, you know, that pink string the next time, try to use the other pink string. And you can tell that by just looking at the bottom of the threads, and whichever one is longer, you know, whichever pink thread is longer, just use that one. And so this one will go pretty quickly when you get the hang of it. And it just makes sort of a kind of rope-like effect. And when you get to the very end, as you'll see, you can kind of twist them around. Just keep going, and you can measure against your own wrist. So you can just keep checking until it's long enough. I like mine to be a little loose so I can take them off of my wrist. So I made mine a little longer, and I just tested it so I knew it was the right length. And just start out with more thread than you think is necessary if you're worried about not having enough. As you can see, I just cut off the rest of my thread, and you want to leave, you know, a couple, probably, you know, 2 inches or so at the end so you can tie the bracelet on. There we go. So this is the second bracelet. This one's going to incorporate the first stitch that I showed you that does the slanted lines of colors. And so this time it is, just remember, important to put your threads in order. So I want it to be blue, yellow, green, blue, yellow, green. So that's what I'm doing. And now I'm going one by one. I'm not doing the 4 around all the strings, just individual ones this time. So I'm doing a row of blue. So I'm going to put that blue, make a 4 around the yellow, and pull that up. There we go. And I'm going to do that again because we're back to where 2 stitches matter. So you need to do 2 stitches. And it always looks a little weird, the first row. It can be, you know, it's really hard to keep everything straight, but that gets easier. When you get further down the bracelet, the colors, the strings, they arrange themselves. And they hold themselves in place. So it's only at the beginning where it's a little tricky and you have to pay attention to that. Okay, and so I just kept going, did the same exact thing until it was long enough. And here I am just tying. You don't have to tie a knot at the end. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't with mine. It just depends on preference. Just try it and see what you like. Sometimes it's nice to tie the knot at the end so that you can keep a fixed circumference when you tie the bracelet around your hand, and it can keep the strings in line, but you don't have to do that. Basically what I do is I just split the strings in half and I put half of them through the loop, and then I tie it around the other end that didn't go through the loop. And I do this when it's around my wrist, but I'm just showing you here, so that's a little easier for you to see. Okay, so we're moving on to the third one, and this starts out similarly to the last one we just did, except it's actually going to be in a V shape. So you're going to be doing half of your threads in one direction and the other half in the other. So I'm just doing the first, I'm using 4 colors in this, by the way, and the last one I used 3. But you can use however many colors you want. So I just went through 3 colors with the color red, and then you'll see what I'm going to do here. That was half of the V, that was the left diagonal of the V. And now I'm going to take the other half and just make sure to keep these strings in the same order. So I went blue, purple, green, red. So I'm going to want to do the same thing on the other side. And there you have just a nice close-up of half the V. And so I'm just doing the same thing on this side, but I'm going in the other direction. So I started on the far right instead of the far left. But I'm doing the same thing. Here we go. And then the important part is just when you finish up this one and you get to the center, and as always, remember to do the stitches twice, you're gonna have 2 threads of the same color at the center. Okay, so I'm just tying those 2 in the middle. And I'm doing the same thing with the 4. It's hard to tell because they're the same color, but you do want to make sure that you do a stitch with those 2 threads. It doesn't matter which one you make the 4 with, it can be either of them. Okay, there you go, that's what it's gonna look like. So that's your V, and now you're just gonna continue with each color. So as you keep going with the stitches, the V is going to become more noticeable. And as I said before, it can be a little hard to see right at the beginning, but now as you watch, I'm adding more rows and it's getting easier to tell that I have made the V pattern. That's the finished product, and I just kept going until it fit around my wrist. So then you can just cut it off and tie it right on. And now I'm sporting all 3 bracelets from this take and make video tonight. Fashionista. There we go. You can do the same. I hope you enjoyed making these 3 bracelets tonight. Thanks, that's all. Have a good evening.